I need you to realize that just because the majority may have one way of thinking, just because the majority may have one way of handling a situation, just because the majority may have come out on top, I need you to realize it does not always mean that the majority always has the right answer. Sometimes out of frustration, you might say things that you may not necessarily mean. And the Bible said that they begin to talk about this, but at some point, what started off as just a jest becomes somewhat of a statement that everybody is beginning to agree upon. What started off as something small becomes cemented as the action that they're about to do. And here is what the Bible said. The Bible says that now, as he's getting closer and closer, they're beginning to talk about this thing more and more. And they look at their brother and say, yeah, we gonna kill him today. Because they think in their mind, if they take Joseph out, then the promise is gonna get killed. If they take Joseph out, then they'll elevate in their status. If they take Joseph out, then their father will no longer look at them as though they're second class. So they begin to talk to each other and say, we're going to kill this brother. But notice in the text that while the majority, listen to me, family, while the majority agree and they come to a consensus, the Bible said that there is still one who stands out. I want you to look at the text closely, because the Bible literally paints this picture that everybody is huddled around as Joseph is walking towards them, and they begin to say that they're going to kill him. And the Bible said the only person that stands up and says no is the brother by the name of Reuben. Now, Reuben already knows that he is outmatched. He knows that he is outnumbered. He knows that he is not necessarily voting the same thing that everybody else voted. But Reuben decides what he wants to do is he wants to kind of curb their vote so that by the time Joseph come in, his life might not be taken. And family, here's the reason why I set up the story, so that you can see where we are in the text. Because I need you to realize that one of the very first things that this text actually shows us is that the physical majority doesn't always have the right answers. I need y'all to hear me on today, that the majority of the group is saying we've got to kill this brother, but y'all already know killing this brother is not the right answer. And so the Bible helps us to realize that it is because of the brother by the name of Reuben, who curbs what they're thinking and curbs what they say. He is able to save his brother's life, which helps us to understand that the majority doesn't always have the right answer. Family, I need you to hear me on today, because just because everyone else is saying it doesn't mean that it's necessarily right. Just because it's trending doesn't mean that it's truth. Come on, somebody. Just because it's popular doesn't mean that it's purposeful. And just because it passed doesn't mean that it's God's plan. Come on, somebody. I need you to realize that just because the majority may have one way of thinking, just because the majority may have one way of handling a situation, just because the majority may have come out on top, I need you to realize it does not always mean that the majority always has the right answers. It's right there in the text, because the majority says this is what has to happen. But every one of us know that that is not the right answer. And so the Bible says that this brother by the name of Reuben, he realizes that the majority already got the vote. Come on, somebody. Ain't nothing he can say that's going to change their mind. But what this brother does is he switches it up so that by the time his brother comes, he don't get slain or don't get thrown in the grave. Come on, somebody. And maybe I should just pause right here, because Joseph comes to his brothers and they eventually throw him into the cistern, so that maybe I should just pause right here and say that sometimes the places that you think are the burdens of your life are actually a blessing for your life. Oh, God, I need y'all to hear me on today. Because hear me, family, the plot of the enemy was to take him out. If it was up to the enemy, he would have been in a coffin. If it was up to the enemy, he would have been in the grave. If it was up to the enemy, he would not be breathing. But I need you to see how God turns the tables around. In other words, he turns into a master chess player so that he takes even what's bad and he begins to work it out for his good. Because my God is the kind of God that can take even bad decisions and make it work it out for your good. Family, the first thing the text shows us is that the majority don't always have, come on somebody, the right answer. Look at your neighbor and say, they ain't always right. Come on somebody. Come on, they're not always right. Come on somebody. Everybody might have an opinion, but I need you to understand, if you always gonna get the right opinion, if you always wanna have the right answer, you've got to go to the right person, and the right person ain't the person who's sitting to your left or who's sitting to your right. The right person will always be God and God alone. Okay, let me put it this way, because some of y'all sleeping right now. Let me say it this way, y'all. I remember like the moment while I was dating my wife, I remember the moment that God told me in my mind, this gonna be the girl that's gonna be your wife for eternity. Come on, somebody. Yo, I remember, man, when I got the feeling that I was gonna propose to this girl. I saw it all in my mind of what's gonna happen and how she's just gonna lay in my hands and say, ooh, baby, you're just the amazing guy that I've been dreaming for my entire life. But there was an issue. Can I tell you what the issues were? The first issue was that her parents didn't really know me that well. Come on, somebody. So they didn't think it was gonna work out. Come on, somebody. The second issue is while I started asking, because I always hung around with older brothers, I started asking some of the older brothers, how should I do this? And when should I propose? And what's a good strategy? What they would often tell me is that I have to live my life now and then lock myself up later. In other words, first of all, her parents didn't know me that well, and they didn't think it was gonna work. The second thing is that the older brothers I was hanging around with was discouraging me from proposing to her, telling me that I have to live my life now, and then I'll lock myself up later. Are y'all with me? But see, even though those things were bad, there was still one worse situation. Somebody say worse. The worst part of this entire situation is that by this time I had been dating my wife for some years, and she had already told me in no uncertain terms that she ain't getting married. Y'all ain't talking back to me. In other words, there is a voice that's coming from heaven saying, I need you to propose to this girl and ask for her hand in marriage. But her parents is not necessarily on my side. The folk around me are not necessarily on my side. And by her own testimony, she ain't even trying to do it. And what do you do when the majority is telling you to do one thing, but you've heard God tell you to do something else? What do you do when you're standing in this position where you're being pulled from one direction to the next? What do you do when all the details don't look like it's going to go your way? Let me tell you what you ought to do, child of God. Do what God says. Y'all, I remember like it was yesterday. I got up, it was a Saturday evening. I just told my mother, I'm about to go to my girlfriend's house and propose to her and tell her she's gonna be my wife. I walked into the room, y'all. I'm not making this thing up. I walked into the room, I walked into her house, and when I walked into her house, the setting was not set for a romantic occasion. Come on, somebody. The entire family was going through spring cleaning, so there was stuff that was flying up here and flying up there, and anyone knows why you're going through spring cleaning, it's not just a messy house, but emotions begin to flare because everybody's blaming everybody else for all the mess that's in the house. So I walk into a messy situation and I see my wife. I began talking to her and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to come out and just say it that I want to marry her. And man, like it gets worse because while I'm talking to her, her father is in the other room saying, Stacy, come clean your mess. In other words, her father knew I was in the house. He knew I wanted to propose to her. Well, he knew that I came here with good intentions because I already told the parents at least 2 weeks before. But in order to stop me, come on, somebody, and prevent me from doing it, the father said, Stacy, come clean your room. And so, man, my wife, because she is a good child and she's a daddy girl and she listens to what her father says, she gets up off the couch where we were talking and she began to walk towards her parents. And it's while she's walking toward her parents that I get a flashback in my mind that it's now or it's never. I grab her by the arms, I get down on one knee, I give her the only poetry that comes in my head, and I said, "Will you be my wife?" And family, I need you to hear me on today, that the same people that were against me were the same people that was watching God at work. The same people that tried to stop me were the same people that was watching her not say no, but say yes. And 12 years later, that's still the best decision that I've ever made in my life outside of getting baptized, because I did not follow the crowd, but I followed God's voice. I'm here to let somebody know that when you have the crowd saying one thing, you've got to follow God's voice. That whenever something bad is coming your way and you don't know what to do, follow God's voice. That even though everybody else says go one way, you've got to stand stable and follow God's